Princess Valara stood in the grand throne room of the Kryn Imperial Palace, watching another suitor approach with exaggerated confidence. This was the 27th one in 3 cycles, and she already knew how this would end. The suitor, a decorated general from the Talion Dominion, wore armor that gleamed with too many metals and spoke with a voice that carried too much pride. "Princess Valara," he began, his chest puffed out like a display bird, "I have conquered 17 systems and commanded fleets of 10,000 ships. My wealth could buy entire planets. Together, we would rule the stars." Valara kept her face neutral, though inside she felt the familiar wave of disappointment. Another one who saw her as a prize to be won, not a person to be known. She glanced at her father, Emperor Thex, who sat on his throne with barely concealed frustration. She knew what was coming. "General Vorath," Valara said calmly, "your achievements are impressive, but I must decline your proposal." The throne room fell silent. Vorath's confident expression cracked, replaced by confusion and then anger. He looked at Emperor Thex as if seeking intervention, but the Emperor simply closed his eyes in resignation. This scene had played out too many times. After Vorath left, making promises of how she would regret this decision, Valara remained standing before her father. She knew the lecture was coming. She had heard it 26 times before. "Valara," Emperor Thex said, his voice heavy with concern, "you cannot keep doing this. The Empire needs alliances. The Kryn needs stability. Your marriage would secure peace with powerful neighbors." "I will not marry someone who sees me as a trophy," Valara replied firmly. "I have led our fleets in battle. I have defended our borders. I have earned the right to choose my own path." "And what path is that?" her father asked. "To reject every suitor until we have no allies left? Until the Empire stands alone against those who would see us fall?" Valara felt the weight of his words. She was not foolish. She understood politics and duty, but she also understood that marrying someone she could not respect would make her miserable for the rest of her long life. The Kryn lived for centuries. That was too long to spend with someone who valued her only for her title. "I will marry," she finally said, "but only someone worthy, someone who sees me, not just what I represent." Her father sighed deeply. "And if such a person never appears?" Valara had no answer for that. She left the throne room and made her way to her private quarters, her guards following at a respectful distance. Her chambers overlooked the capital city of the Kryn homeworld, where towers of crystal and metal stretched toward the purple sky. She loved her people and her empire, but sometimes she felt trapped by the expectations placed upon her. Her personal advisor, Commander Rin, entered after a respectful knock. Rin had served with Valara during the pirate campaigns in the Outer Rim. She was one of the few people who treated Valara as a warrior first and a princess second. "Another one bites the dust," Rin said with a slight smile. Vorath looked quite upset. "He will recover," Valara said. "His pride is bruised, nothing more. He never cared about me as a person." "The Emperor is worried," Rin said more seriously. "The political situation is delicate. The Talion Dominion is powerful. Rejecting their general could have consequences." Valara turned from the window. "Then let them come. We will defend ourselves as we always have. I refuse to sell myself for temporary peace." Rin nodded, understanding but still concerned. "There is other news. The humans are sending their first official delegation to Nexus Point Station. They have requested a meeting with Kryn leadership." "Humans?" Valara raised an eyebrow. "The newcomers. I have heard they are primitive. They only achieved faster-than-light travel recently." 2 generations ago, Rin confirmed, "but they have been making waves. They solved the automated defense crisis in the frontier worlds when no one else could. Their methods are unconventional but effective." Valara felt a spark of curiosity. The galaxy was full of ancient races with ancient ways. The Kryn themselves had been spacefaring for thousands of years. Everything was predictable, traditional, bound by rules that never changed. Perhaps something new would be interesting. "Who leads their delegation?" she asked. "An ambassador named Kim Doyen, former military officer from what intelligence reports say. He has a small team with him." "Small team?" Valara frowned. "Most delegations bring hundreds of staff and security." "Apparently humans prefer efficiency over pageantry," Rin said with amusement. "It should be entertaining if nothing else." Emperor Thex had decided to send representatives to Nexus Point for the meeting. Valara was not initially chosen to attend. which suited her fine. She had fleet exercises to oversee and reports to review, but then her father summoned her again. "I want you to go to Nexus Point," he said without preamble. "Father, I have duties here." "This is your duty," he interrupted. "Meet these humans. Assess them. Determine if they could be valuable allies or potential threats. Your military experience makes you ideal for this." Valara understood. Her father was giving her a mission, something she was good at, while also getting her away from the political pressure at court. She appreciated the gesture even if she suspected ulterior motives. "Very well," she agreed. "I will leave tomorrow." The journey to Nexus Point took 3 days through hyperspace lanes. Valara traveled on her personal ship with a small contingent of guards and Rin. The station was a massive structure that served as neutral ground for diplomatic meetings between different star systems. It was built by the ancient architects centuries ago and maintained by a council of representatives from various species. As her ship docked, Valara reviewed what little information they had about humans. They came from a planet called Earth in a relatively isolated part of the galaxy. Their history was violent, marked by wars that nearly destroyed their entire species. But somehow they survived and united, reaching for the stars with determination that impressed even skeptical observers. They were physically weaker than most spacefaring species. No natural armor, no enhanced senses, no particular advantages. Yet they adapted quickly, learned fast, and showed remarkable resilience. The reports called them stubborn, creative, and unpredictable. Valara found herself curious despite her usual indifference to diplomatic affairs. Perhaps these humans would be different from the usual pompous delegates who cared only about status and power. She had no idea how right she was. And she had no idea that her life was about to change in ways she never imagined possible. The human delegation's ship was nothing impressive by galactic standards. It was a mid-sized diplomatic vessel, functional and clean but lacking the ornate decorations that most species favored. Ambassador Kim Doyen stood in the briefing room with his small team, reviewing their mission parameters one final time. "Remember," Doyen said, his voice calm and measured, "we are the new kids in a very old galaxy. Many species will underestimate us. Some will dismiss us. Do not take offense. Use it to our advantage. Watch, listen, and learn." His team consisted of 5 people, which had surprised everyone at Nexus Point when they docked. Most delegations brought dozens or even hundreds of staff, but Doyen believed in efficiency. Every person on his team had multiple skills and clear purposes. Lieutenant Han Jiwoo stood near the back of the room, reviewing security protocols on his datapad. He was young for his position, only 28 Earth years, but his military record spoke for itself. During the Frontier World crisis, when automated defense systems went rogue and threatened colonies, Jiwoo had been part of the team that developed new tactics to counter the threat. He was not the strongest soldier or the fastest pilot, but he had something more valuable. He could think clearly under pressure and adapt quickly to changing situations. "Jiwoo," Doyen said, pulling him from his thoughts, "you will be our security liaison. The Kryn are warrior people. They respect strength and tactical thinking. Be professional, be respectful, but do not try to impress them. Just be yourself." Jiwoo nodded. "Understood, sir." The other team members included Park Mina, a cultural specialist who had spent years studying alien languages and customs; Lee Sodom, an economic advisor who understood trade better than anyone Doyen had ever met; and 2 technical staff members who managed communications and data analysis. As they prepared to disembark, Mina pulled up information about their hosts on the main display. The Kryn Empire is one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations. They value honor, strength, and tradition. Physical prowess is highly respected. They have been in space for over 3,000 years. And they will look at us and see children playing at politics. Sodom added dryly. Humanity has been in space for barely 60 years. Then we show them what human children can do, Doyen said with a slight smile. They entered Nexus Point through the diplomatic entrance, where they were greeted by station officials and representatives from various species. Jiwoo noticed the stares, the whispers, the barely concealed curiosity. Some looked at the humans with interest, others with dismissal. He kept his expression neutral and his attention sharp. The welcome ceremony was held in one of the station's grand halls. Hundreds of delegates from different star systems gathered to witness the humans' first official appearance. Jiwoo stood with his team, noting the security arrangements, the exit points, the positioning of various guards. Old habits from his military training never really left him. Then the Kryn delegation arrived and the atmosphere in the room changed. They were impressive beings, taller than humans, with skin that seemed to shimmer with faint iridescence. They moved with confidence and grace, like predators who knew they were at the top of the food chain. Leading them was Princess Valara. Jiwoo recognized her from the briefing materials, though the images had not captured her presence. She wore armor that was both ceremonial and functional, decorated with symbols of her rank but clearly designed for actual combat. Her eyes swept across the room with the assessment of an experienced warrior. When her gaze passed over the human delegation, Jiwoo saw no contempt or dismissal, only careful evaluation. He found that refreshing compared to some of the other delegates who had looked at them like amusing curiosities. Ambassador Doyen stepped forward to make the formal greeting. His speech was brief and respectful, acknowledging the honor of meeting with such ancient civilizations and expressing humanity's desire to learn and cooperate. He did not grovel or exaggerate. He simply stated facts. Valara responded on behalf of the Kryn Emperor. Her voice was strong and clear. The Kryn Empire welcomes humanity to the galactic community. Your achievements in the frontier worlds have been noted. We look forward to learning more about your people. The ceremony continued with various speeches and formal presentations. Jiwoo remained alert, watching everything. That vigilance saved lives. He noticed the small maintenance drone before anyone else did. It was moving through the upper levels of the hall, which was normal enough. But its path was wrong. It was heading directly toward the diplomatic platform, and its movements were too purposeful. Maintenance drones wandered randomly, following programmed patterns. This one had a target. Ambassador, Jiwoo said quietly, his hand moving to Doyen's arm. Upper level, Section 7. That drone is wrong. Doyen had learned to trust Jiwoo's instincts. He did not question or hesitate. Get people clear, Jiwoo moved fast. He did not shout or cause panic. He walked quickly to the nearest Kryn guard, a massive warrior who looked at him with surprise as the small human approached. That drone, Jiwoo said, pointing. It is not following normal patterns. It is heading toward the princess. I believe it is a threat. The guard looked skeptical for a moment, but then he followed Jiwoo's pointing finger and saw what the human had seen. His eyes widened. He immediately signaled to other guards and began moving toward Valara. The drone suddenly accelerated, confirming Jiwoo's suspicion. It was diving toward the platform where Valara and other high-ranking delegates stood. Jiwoo did not have a weapon. Station protocol forbade it. But he had his mind and his body. He ran toward the platform, calculating angles and trajectories. The drone was fast, but it was following a straight line now, committed to its attack path. Jiwoo grabbed a ceremonial banner pole heavy in metal and threw it like a javelin. His aim was not to hit the drone, that would be nearly impossible. His aim was to create an obstacle in its path, to force it to adjust. The drone swerved to avoid the pole. That split-second adjustment gave the Kryn guards time to react. They opened fire with weapons that crackled with energy, destroying the drone in mid-air. Debris rained down but away from the delegates. The hall erupted in chaos. Guards surrounded their charges. Diplomats shouted questions and alarms began blaring. Jiwoo stood on the platform, breathing heavily, his formal diplomatic clothes now disheveled. He had acted on instinct, not thinking about consequences. Valara stood a few feet away, her own weapon drawn, her guards forming a protective circle around her. She looked at Jiwoo with an expression he could not quite read. Surprise, certainly, but also something else. Respect, maybe. You saw it first, she said. Before my guards. Before anyone. Jiwoo straightened, trying to recover some dignity. I was watching the room. Old military habit. The movement pattern was wrong. You threw a banner pole at an assassin drone, she said, and now there was definite amusement in her voice. That was either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both, Jiwoo admitted. I did not have many options. One of her guards snorted, which might have been laughter. Valara studied Jiwoo for a long moment, then nodded once. What is your name, human? Lieutenant Han Jiwoo, security liaison for the human delegation. Lieutenant Han Jiwoo, she repeated, as if testing the sound. The Kryn Empire thanks you for your vigilance. You may have saved lives today. She turned to issue orders to her guards and Jiwoo returned to his team. Doyen clapped him on the shoulder. Good work. Though next time, maybe warn me before you start throwing things at attack drones. I will try. Sir? Jiwoo said with a slight smile. As the station security worked to determine who had sent the assassin drone, Jiwoo noticed Valara looking at him several times across the room. He told himself it meant nothing. She was simply assessing a potential asset, as any good commander would. He had no idea that his actions had already set in motion events that would change both their lives forever. The investigation into the assassin drone took 3 days. During that time, Nexus Point Station was locked down, with enhanced security everywhere. The culprits turned out to be a radical faction opposed to the Kryn Empire forming new alliances. They were arrested, but the incident had consequences. Emperor Thex, concerned about his daughter's safety, and impressed by how the human delegation had handled the crisis, invited them to the Kryn homeworld for extended negotiations. The official reason was to discuss potential trade agreements and mutual defense arrangements. But everyone knew it was also because the Emperor wanted to keep Valara somewhere safer, while political tensions settled. Valara learned of this plan with mixed feelings. On one hand, she disliked being treated like fragile crystal that needed protecting. On the other hand, she was curious about the humans, particularly the young lieutenant who had spotted danger before anyone else. When Ambassador Doyen and his team accepted the invitation, Emperor Thex assigned Valara as their official escort. You will accompany them on the journey, he told her. Assess their capabilities. Determine if humanity can be a true ally to the Kryn. Valara suspected her father had additional motives. He was always scheming, always planning, but she accepted the assignment without complaint. At least it would be more interesting than listening to another pompous suitor declare his supposed greatness. The journey from Nexus Point to the Kryn homeworld took 5 days through the hyperspace lanes. Valara's ship was large enough to accommodate guests, so the human delegation traveled with her rather than following in their own vessel. This allowed for more direct interaction. For the first 2 days, interactions were formal and polite. Ambassador Doyen met with Valara to discuss agenda items for the upcoming negotiations. Park Mina asked endless questions about Kryn culture, taking detailed notes. Lee Sodom reviewed economic data with Valara's trade advisors, and Jiwoo performed his security duties, coordinating with Valara's guards, checking systems, and maintaining a professional distance from everyone. It was on the 3rd day that things changed. Valara found herself unable to sleep, a common problem when traveling through hyperspace. She went to the observation deck expecting to be alone. Instead, she found Jiwoo standing by the window looking out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. Lieutenant, she said, announcing her presence. You should be resting. He turned, surprised, then straightened respectfully. Princess, I apologize. I did not mean to intrude on your private space. You are not intruding, she said, moving to stand beside him. I could not sleep either. Hyperspace does that to some people. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the impossible colors flow past the ship. It was peaceful in a strange way. Being between spaces, between destinations. May I ask you something? Valara said finally. Of course. At the ceremony, you noticed the drone before my guards did? Before anyone did, how? Jiwoo considered the question carefully. I was not stronger or faster than your guards. I was just looking at different things. Your guards were watching for direct threats, people with weapons, obvious dangers. I was watching patterns. The drone's movement pattern was wrong. Sometimes seeing something does not require great skill. It just requires looking from a different angle. Valara found this answer intriguing. Most warriors she knew relied on strength, speed, enhanced senses. This human spoke of observation and pattern recognition. Different tools for different problems. Tell me about Earth, she said. I have read reports, but they are just data. What is your world really like? So Jiwoo told her. He spoke of Earth's blue oceans and green forests, of mountains that touched clouds and deserts that stretched to horizons. He told her about human history, the terrible wars that nearly ended everything, the weapons that could destroy entire cities in moments. He spoke honestly about humanity's failures and violence. We almost killed ourselves, he said quietly. Multiple times. We came so close to extinction that it terrifies us when we think about it. But somehow we survived. We learned. We looked at what we had done and decided to try being better. And did you succeed? Valara asked. At being better? We are still trying, Jiwoo admitted. We still have conflicts. We still disagree. But we no longer point weapons of mass destruction at each other. We channel our competitive nature into other things: exploration, science, art, sports. We argue with words now instead of weapons. Valara thought about the Kryn, who had been warriors for thousands of years. They had traditions of honor and combat that went back before written history. But they had never faced the kind of self-destructive crisis Jiwoo described. Perhaps because they had never been quite desperate or quite foolish enough to nearly destroy themselves. The report said humans are weak, she said, not as an insult but as an observation, compared to most spacefaring species. Physically, yes, Jiwoo agreed without defensiveness. We have no natural armor, no enhanced strength, no special abilities. We are soft and breakable, but we adapt, we learn. We refuse to quit even when we should. My instructors at the military academy called it stubbornness. I prefer to think of it as determination. Valara smiled at that. I think I understand. You survive not through strength, but through refusal to accept defeat. Something like that, Jiwoo said, returning the smile. They talked for hours that night, losing track of time. Valara found herself sharing things she rarely told anyone. Her frustration with being treated as a political tool rather than a person, her love for fleet command and the freedom of space, her fear that she might never find someone who saw her as herself rather than as a title. Jiwoo listened without judgment, without offering easy solutions. When she finished, he simply said, "What do you want? Not what your father wants or what the Empire needs. What do you want?" The question was so direct, so simple, that it caught Valara off guard. Nobody had ever asked her that before. They told her what she should want, what was expected, what was proper. But nobody asked what she actually wanted. "I want to be respected for who I am," she said slowly. "Not feared because of my title or valued because of political advantage. I want to make my own choices. I want to matter as a person." "That seems reasonable," Jiwoo said. "You have earned respect through your actions. Anyone who cannot see that is not worth your time." It was such a simple statement delivered without flattery or exaggeration, just honest observation. Valara felt something shift inside her, though she could not name what it was. Over the next 2 days, they continued to meet and talk. Sometimes about serious topics, sometimes about trivial things. Jiwoo told her about human music and food. Valara explained Kryn battle poetry and the complex honor codes that governed warrior society. They discussed military tactics and found they approached problems similarly, despite coming from completely different backgrounds. Commander Rin noticed the developing friendship and pulled Valara aside. "The human lieutenant," she said carefully. "You spend much time with him." "He is interesting," Valara said, trying to sound casual. "Different from what I expected." "He is also human," Rin pointed out. "There are complications." "I am aware," Valara said, more sharply than intended. "I am simply talking with him." "Is that forbidden?" Rin raised her hands in surrender. "I meant no offense. I only observe that you smile more when he is around. That has not happened with any of the suitors." Valara wanted to deny it, but Rin was right. She did feel lighter when talking with Jiwoo. He did not perform or posture. He just existed honestly and genuinely. It was refreshing. On the final night before they reached the Kryn homeworld, Valara and Jiwoo met again at the observation window. This time, real stars were visible rather than hyperspace colors. The Kryn home system spread before them, beautiful and familiar. "Tomorrow we arrive," Valara said. "Then begins the complicated part. Politics and negotiations." "Ambassador Doyen is very good at that," Jiwoo assured her. "We will do our best." "I know you will," Valara said. Then, surprising herself, she added, "I have enjoyed these conversations, Lieutenant." "Thank you." "I have enjoyed them too, Princess," Jiwoo replied. "And you can call me Jiwoo. We have talked enough that formality seems unnecessary." "Then call me Valara," she said. "At least when we are alone." He nodded, and they stood together watching the stars, both aware that something had changed between them, but neither quite ready to name it. Neither of them knew that the complications were only beginning, and that the political situation was about to become much more difficult than either imagined. The Kryn homeworld was magnificent. From orbit, Jiwoo could see vast oceans of deep purple, continents covered in silver forests, and cities that gleamed like jewels. The capital city stretched across an entire valley, with towers reaching toward the sky and architecture that blended natural formations with advanced technology. The human delegation was given quarters in the Imperial Palace complex, a gesture of high honor according to Park Mina's cultural research. The rooms were spacious and comfortable, though everything was built for beings larger than humans. Jiwoo felt like a child in furniture made for adults. Ambassador Doyen immediately began formal negotiations with Emperor Thex and his advisors. The discussions covered trade routes, technology exchange, and potential mutual defense agreements. Park Mina and Lee Sodom worked tirelessly, reviewing documents and preparing briefings. They were making good progress, slowly building trust between two very different civilizations. Meanwhile, Jiwoo found himself invited to observe Kryn military training. Valara had arranged it, suggesting that cultural exchange should include military perspectives. The training grounds were massive, designed for warriors who valued physical combat even in an age of advanced weapons. The Kryn soldiers were impressive. They moved with speed and precision, their enhanced physiology giving them advantages no baseline human could match. They practiced with traditional weapons and modern ones, maintaining connections to ancient warrior traditions while adapting to contemporary warfare. The training master, a grizzled veteran named Commander Thorin, looked at Jiwoo with barely concealed skepticism. "So you are the human who spotted the assassin drone? Lucky, I suppose." "Perhaps," Jiwoo replied evenly, refusing to rise to the provocation. "Care to show us what human soldiers can do?" Thorin asked, gesturing to the training field. Several Kryn warriors stopped their exercises to watch. Word had spread about the human delegation, and curiosity was high. Jiwoo knew he was being tested. He could decline and be seen as weak, or he could participate and likely embarrass himself against opponents who were physically superior in every way. But he thought about what he had told Valara about humanity. They adapt, they learn, they refuse to quit. "I would be honored," he said. The exercise was a tactical simulation. Teams had to capture objectives while defending their own positions, using a mix of strategy and combat skills. Jiwoo was placed on a team with 3 Kryn warriors who looked at him with doubt. He was smaller, weaker, and completely unfamiliar with their methods. But as the exercise began, Jiwoo did what humans did best. He adapted. He could not match his teammates in strength or speed, so he focused on other things. He observed patterns in the opposing team's movements. He identified weaknesses in their defensive positions. He suggested alternative approaches that used terrain and timing rather than brute force. At first, his teammates ignored him. But when one of his suggestions worked perfectly, allowing them to capture an objective with minimal effort, they started listening. By the end of the exercise, they were actively asking for his input. Commander Thorin watched with growing interest. After the exercise ended, he approached Jiwoo. "You think differently than we do. Where we see obstacles requiring strength to overcome, you see puzzles requiring solutions. Different tools for different problems," Jiwoo said, echoing what he had told Valara. "I want to see more," Thorin declared. "Tomorrow you will train with us again." Word spread quickly through the palace. The human who thought differently. The small warrior who used his mind as a weapon. Some Kryn found it amusing, others intriguing, and some saw it as an insult to proper warrior traditions. Among those insulted was General Vorath, one of the suitors Valara had rejected. He had returned to the homeworld after his proposal was declined, nursing his wounded pride. The presence of humans, and particularly the attention Valara seemed to give the young lieutenant, irritated him greatly. Vorath began making comments in court. "The princess spends time with this human," he said to other nobles. "What does it say about the Kryn if our royal family prefers weak aliens to strong warriors?" The gossip reached Valara's ears as gossip always did. She was furious but controlled. She could not respond directly without giving the rumors more weight. But she also could not ignore them entirely. She confronted her father. "Vorath spreads poison because his pride was hurt. He endangers our negotiations with the humans." Emperor Thex sighed. He looked tired, older than Valara remembered. "Vorath is a fool, but he comes from a powerful family. The Talion Dominion watches how we treat him. We must be careful." "So I should stop speaking with Lieutenant Jiwoo?" Valara asked, her voice sharp. "I did not say that," her father replied. "But perhaps you should consider why you defend him so strongly." Valara had no answer for that because the answer frightened her. She had spent her life rejecting suitors, maintaining her independence, refusing to be swayed by charm or intimidation. But Jiwoo was different. He did not try to impress her or win her favor. He simply existed as himself, and she found that more compelling than all the elaborate courtship she had endured. The situation came to a head during a formal court gathering. Ambassador Doyen was presenting a proposal for joint scientific research projects, with Park Mina providing detailed explanations of human technological approaches. The discussion was going well until Vorath stood up. "A question," he said loudly. "Why should the Kryn Empire partner with a species that has existed in space for barely 2 generations? What can humans possibly teach us that we have not known for thousands of years?" The question was meant to insult, but Doyen handled it smoothly. "We do not claim to be your teachers, General. We offer partnership. Often, those who approach problems differently can find solutions that traditional methods miss. Our youth in space means we have not yet learned what is supposedly impossible." "Pretty words," Vorath sneered. "But I wonder if this is truly about partnership, or if humans seek to ingratiate themselves with the Kryn through other means." He looked pointedly at Valara. The court went silent. The implication was clear and insulting. Valara felt her temper rise, but before she could respond, Jiwoo stepped forward. He moved calmly without aggression, but his voice carried clearly through the hall. "General Vorath, I am Lieutenant Han Jiwoo of the human delegation. If you have concerns about my conduct, you should address them to me directly rather than speak in implications." Vorath turned to face Jiwoo, his expression cold. "Very well, human. I question whether your delegation truly seeks partnership, or whether you use diplomatic access to pursue inappropriate relationships with Kryn royalty." Jiwoo's face remained neutral. "My conduct has been entirely proper. I have followed all diplomatic protocols. If you believe otherwise, you should file formal complaints through appropriate channels." "Words again," Vorath said dismissively, "but perhaps actions speak louder. I challenge you to a trial of honor. If you are confident in your worthiness to even speak with Princess Valara, prove it in the traditional Kryn manner." The court erupted in whispers. A trial of honor was a formal combat ritual, used to settle disputes between warriors. It was binding in public. If Jiwoo refused, he would be seen as a coward, damaging both his own reputation and humanity's standing. If he accepted, he would face an opponent far superior in strength and combat ability. Ambassador Doyen looked alarmed. Park Mina was frantically checking her cultural database for information about trials of honor. Lee Sodom was calculating political consequences. But Jiwoo knew there was only one possible answer. To refuse would confirm every dismissive assumption about humanity. It would undermine everything they had worked to build. More than that, it would suggest that Vorath's implications had merit, that there was something inappropriate to hide. "I accept your challenge," Jiwoo said calmly. "When and where?" Vorath smiled, satisfied. 3 days from now in the Grand Arena. Witnesses from all courts will attend. We shall see what human honor is truly worth." As the court session ended, Valara caught Jiwoo's arm. "You should not have accepted. Vorath is one of our finest warriors. He has genetic enhancements that make him faster and stronger than normal Kryn. Against him I will lose," Jiwoo finished for her. "Probably. But I could not refuse. Why not?" she demanded. "Pride is not worth your life." Jiwoo looked at her with complete honesty. "It is not about pride. It is about showing that humans do not back down from challenges. It is about proving we belong in the galaxy and—" He hesitated, then continued, "It is about honoring your friendship, which has meant more to me than you know." Valara felt something break inside her, some last wall of resistance she had maintained. This human was willing to face almost certain defeat and humiliation, because he refused to let implications tarnish her reputation. No suitor had ever cared about her honor more than their own glory. "Then we train," she said firmly. "You have 3 days. I will teach you what I can about Kryn combat styles. If you must face Vorath, you will do so with every advantage I can give you." Jiwoo smiled. "Thank you, Valara." As they left to begin training, neither noticed Commander Rin watching with a knowing expression, or Emperor Thex observing from his throne with calculation in his ancient eyes. The 3 days before the trial of honor passed in a blur of training. Valara worked with Jiwoo from dawn until long after dark, teaching him everything she could about Kryn combat styles. But she knew it was not enough. 3 days could not overcome a lifetime of different biology and training. Vorath fights like all enhanced warriors, she explained, demonstrating movements in the private training room. He relies on his superior speed and strength. He will try to overwhelm you quickly, expecting you to break under pressure. Then I need to not do what he expects, Jiwoo said, watching her movements carefully. Yes, but how? You cannot match his strength. You cannot match his speed. In a direct confrontation, you will lose. Jiwoo had spent his military career facing similar problems. Humans often encountered situations where they were outmatched in obvious ways. The solution was always the same: change the nature of the fight. Tell me about the arena, he said. What is the terrain like? What are the rules? What tools are allowed? Valara described the grand arena. It was a massive space that could simulate different environments. For trials of honor, traditional weapons were used: bladed weapons, staffs, shields. No projectile weapons or advanced technology. The terrain would be varied, with obstacles and elevation changes. Victory came through disarmament or submission. Death was possible but not required. So I do not need to defeat him, Jiwoo said thoughtfully. I just need to force him to submit or disarm him. That is still nearly impossible against someone like Vorath. Nearly impossible is better than completely impossible, Jiwoo replied with a slight smile. He studied recordings of Vorath's previous fights. The general was skilled, no question. But he was also predictable. He relied on patterns that had always worked for him. He used his advantages in straightforward ways. And he had never faced an opponent who fought like a human. Park Mina stopped by the training room with a tablet full of research. I have been studying human warriors throughout history, she said, looking for examples of weaker combatants defeating stronger opponents. The common thread is that they make the fight about something other than raw strength. She showed examples. Ancient warriors who used terrain and tactics to defeat more powerful armies. Martial artists who redirected force rather than opposing it. Soldiers who turned enemy advantages into disadvantages. Humans win by changing the rules, Mina concluded, by refusing to fight on terms that favor the opponent. Then that is what I will do, Jiwoo said. The night before the trial, Jiwoo could not sleep. He walked through the palace gardens trying to calm his mind. He found Valara there sitting by a fountain looking up at the unfamiliar stars. Cannot sleep either, he asked, sitting beside her. I keep thinking about tomorrow, she admitted. I keep seeing possible outcomes and most of them are bad. For what it is worth, Jiwoo said, I have accepted the likely outcome. Vorath is better than me in almost every way, but I can try. That is all anyone can do. Why? Valara asked, turning to face him. Why does this matter so much to you? Jiwoo was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because when I talk to you, I see someone trapped by expectations. Everyone telling you what you should do, who you should be, who you should marry, and you resist because you deserve better. You deserve to make your own choices. And what does that have to do with fighting Vorath? If I refuse his challenge, it confirms the implications. It suggests there is something wrong with our friendship. Something inappropriate that needs to be hidden. But there is nothing wrong with it. You have every right to speak with anyone you choose, and I refuse to let Vorath's wounded pride suggest otherwise. Valara felt tears threatening, which surprised her. She was a warrior, a commander of fleets. She did not cry. But Jiwoo's words touched something deep inside her. No one has ever defended my right to choose before, she said quietly. They defend my honor, my title, my value to the Empire, but not my right to simply be a person with my own will. Then they are all fools, Jiwoo said simply. They sat together in silence for a while, and then Valara did something impulsive. She leaned over and kissed him gently on the cheek. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said, thank you for seeing me. Jiwoo touched his cheek, surprised and moved. I will do my best tomorrow. Not for pride or politics. For you. The next day, the grand arena was filled to capacity. Thousands of Kryn attended, along with delegates from various species. It was rare to see a trial of honor involving an alien species, especially one so new to the galactic community. Many came expecting a quick, brutal lesson in Kryn superiority. The human delegation sat in a special viewing area. Ambassador Doyen looked worried, though he tried to hide it. Park Mina and Lee Sodom watched with tense expressions. They had all tried to find a way out of this situation, but there was none. The trial was binding. Valara sat in the royal box with her father. Emperor Thex leaned close to her. "You care for him," he said quietly. It was not a question. "He is my friend," Valara replied carefully. "He is more than that, and we both know it. Tell me, daughter, if he survives today, what then?" Valara had no answer. She had been avoiding that question, focusing on the immediate crisis. But her father was right. Her feelings for Jiwoo had grown beyond friendship, and that created complications neither of them had prepared for. The arena floor shifted and changed, creating the combat environment. Rocky terrain with elevation changes, scattered cover, areas of open ground. It was designed to test both tactical thinking and combat prowess. Vorath entered first wearing ceremonial combat armor. He was impressive, every inch the enhanced warrior. The crowd roared approval. He raised his weapon, a traditional Kryn blade, and saluted the Emperor. Then Jiwoo entered. He looked small in comparison, wearing lighter armor that allowed more mobility. He carried a blade and a short staff. He walked calmly, showing no fear, though everyone watching knew he was outmatched. The arena master read the formal challenge and the terms. Then he stepped back. "Begin." Vorath charged immediately, confident in his superiority. He moved with incredible speed, blade flashing. He expected Jiwoo to defend desperately, to be driven back under the assault. Instead, Jiwoo did something unexpected. He ran, not away in panic, but strategically moving to higher ground. Vorath followed, annoyed but still confident. The human was just delaying the inevitable. But as the fight continued, Vorath began to realize something was wrong. Every time he pressed an attack, Jiwoo was not quite where expected. When he swung his blade, Jiwoo had already moved. When he tried to use his strength to overwhelm, Jiwoo redirected rather than opposing directly. Jiwoo was fighting like water, flowing around attacks rather than blocking them. He used the terrain constantly, forcing Vorath to adjust positions, making him work harder than he had planned. And while Vorath was faster and stronger, he was also burning energy at a tremendous rate trying to catch his elusive opponent. The crowd's mood shifted from amusement to confusion to interest. This was not the quick humiliation they expected. The human was not winning, but he was not losing quickly either. He was making Vorath work for every advantage. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Vorath was breathing heavily now, frustrated by his inability to land decisive blows. Jiwoo had taken some hits, was bleeding from several cuts, but he kept moving, kept adapting, kept refusing to quit. "Stand still." Vorath snarled in frustration. "No," Jiwoo replied simply. Vorath changed tactics, trying to use brute force to break through. He charged with all his enhanced speed. Blade aimed to disarm and humiliate. But he was angry now, not thinking clearly, and that was exactly what Jiwoo had been waiting for. As Vorath committed to his charge, Jiwoo did something crazy. Instead of dodging, he moved forward, inside Vorath's reach. He used his staff to redirect the blade strike, then locked his leg behind Vorath's in a move no Kryn would expect. They fell together, momentum and physics overwhelming even enhanced strength. They hit the ground hard, Jiwoo on top. He had lost his blade in the fall, but he still had the staff. He pressed it against Vorath's throat, not enough to choke, but enough to show control. His other hand pinned Vorath's weapon arm. "Submit," Jiwoo said, breathing hard. "This does not need to end with more blood." Vorath struggled, but the position was wrong for him. His strength could not overcome the physics of the situation. He had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and now he was trapped. The crowd was absolutely silent, shocked by what they were witnessing. "Submit," Jiwoo repeated. "You fought with honor. There is no shame in ending this now." Vorath's face twisted with rage and humiliation, but he was a warrior, and he understood when a fight was lost. "I submit," he said through gritted teeth. The arena master stepped forward. "The trial is concluded. Victory to Lieutenant Han Jiwoo of the human delegation." The crowd exploded. Some shouted in approval, others in disbelief. Many simply stared, trying to process what they had just seen. Jiwoo stood carefully, offering his hand to help Vorath up. The general ignored it, standing on his own and walking away without a word. His pride was shattered, but he would survive. Jiwoo swayed slightly, exhaustion and pain catching up with him now that the adrenaline was fading. Medics rushed forward, but he waved them off long enough to look up at the royal box. Valara was standing, her expression a mix of relief, pride, and something deeper. Their eyes met across the arena, and in that moment, the medical center in the Imperial Palace was efficient and advanced. Jiwoo's injuries were treated quickly. Bruised ribs, multiple cuts, strained muscles, and general exhaustion. Nothing permanently damaging, but enough to keep him in the medical wing overnight for observation. Ambassador Doyen visited first, relief evident on his normally controlled face. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever seen," he said. "Probably both," Jiwoo replied, echoing what he had told Valara weeks ago at Nexus Point. "Did it damage the negotiations?" "Damage them?" Doyen laughed. "Half the Kryn court is talking about nothing else. The human who refused to quit. The warrior who changed the rules. You have made quite an impression." "I did not do it for impressions," Jiwoo said. "I did it because it was necessary." Doyen studied him carefully. "The princess has been waiting outside since you were brought in. She has refused to leave. I think we need to have a conversation about where this situation is heading." Before Jiwoo could respond, Doyen's communicator chimed. He checked it and his expression changed to surprise. "The Emperor requests a private meeting with me. Immediately." He looked at Jiwoo. "Rest, we will talk later." After Doyen left, the medical staff allowed Valara to enter. She looked composed, but Jiwoo could see the strain in her eyes. She sat beside his bed without speaking for a long moment. "You are an idiot," she finally said. "I have been told that before, you could have been killed, humiliated. What you did was reckless and dangerous and completely unnecessary." "Yes," Jiwoo agreed. "It was all of those things." "Then why?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Why risk so much?" "Because someone needed to show that humans do not back down from challenges. Because Vorath's implications needed to be answered. And because..." He hesitated, then decided honesty was required. "Because I care about you, Valara. More than I should. More than is probably wise. And I could not let anyone suggest there was something wrong with that." Valara closed her eyes. When she opened them again, tears were visible. "You are an idiot," she repeated, but her voice was soft. "A brave, stubborn, impossible idiot. I have been called worse," Jiwoo said with a slight smile. She leaned forward and kissed him, properly this time. Not the gentle kiss on the cheek from the garden, but a real kiss that carried all the emotions they had both been trying to contain. When they finally separated, both were breathing hard. "This is going to be complicated," Valara said. "Everything worthwhile is complicated," Jiwoo replied. Meanwhile, in the Emperor's private chambers, a different conversation was taking place. Emperor Thek sat across from Ambassador Doyen, with no advisors or guards present. This was not an official diplomatic meeting. This was something more personal. "Your lieutenant performed remarkably today," Thex began. "He did," Doyen agreed cautiously, unsure where this was leading. "My daughter has rejected 27 suitors over the past 3 cycles. She has refused every marriage arrangement I proposed. She insisted she would only marry someone worthy of her respect." Thex paused. "I believe she has found such a person." Doyen felt his stomach drop. He had suspected this might happen, but having it stated so directly was still shocking. "Your Majesty, Lieutenant Jiwoo is a fine officer, but a marriage between him and the princess would create enormous complications." "Indeed," Thex agreed. "Political complications, cultural complications, diplomatic complications. It would be unprecedented. Many would oppose it." He leaned forward. "But it would also create something unprecedented. A bond between our species symbolized by genuine connection, rather than cold political calculation. Are you suggesting?" Doyen could not quite believe what he was hearing. "I am suggesting that if my daughter and your lieutenant both wish it, I would support their union. More than that, I would propose it formally as a marriage alliance between our peoples." Doyen's mind raced through implications. This could be an incredible opportunity or a diplomatic disaster. "I would need to consult with Earth's government. This is far beyond my authority to approve." "Of course," Thek said, "but I am not asking you to approve. I am asking if you personally believe this could work." Doyen thought about Jiwoo. Young, capable, honest, and apparently in love with an alien princess. He thought about everything humanity had worked for. The relationships they were trying to build in a galaxy that viewed them as newcomers. And he thought about the simple fact that genuine connection was rare and valuable. "I think," Doyen said carefully, "that if 2 people truly care for each other, and if their union could benefit both our peoples, then we should at least explore the possibility." Thex nodded, satisfied. "Then we shall proceed carefully. First, we must determine if they truly wish this. I will not force my daughter into another unwanted marriage, regardless of political benefits. And I will not pressure Lieutenant Jiwoo to accept something he does not want. Doyeon agreed. This must be their choice. 2 days later, after Jiwoo was released from medical care and the political situation had calmed somewhat, both Valara and Jiwoo were summoned to separate private meetings. Neither knew what was coming. Valara met with her father in his personal garden. He looked at her with an expression she rarely saw, uncertainty. "The human lieutenant," he began without preamble. "You care for him." Valara considered denying it, but what was the point? Her father was not foolish. "I do, more than care." "You love him?" She took a breath. Yes, Thex nodded slowly. "I have a proposal. Not a command, not a political arrangement you must endure. A proposal for you to consider and decide freely." He explained his conversation with Ambassador Doyeon, the suggestion of a marriage alliance, the symbolic and practical benefits. Valara listened with growing astonishment. "You would support this?" she asked. "After years of trying to marry me to powerful nobles and warriors?" "I wanted you to marry someone worthy," Thex said. "Someone who would be a true partner. I believed that meant someone from a powerful family, someone with resources and influence. But I was wrong. Worth is not measured in titles or territories. Your human has proven his worth through actions, through character, through his willingness to stand against impossible odds for what he believes is right. If I accept," Valara said slowly, "there will be opposition. Powerful families will be offended. Some will see it as an insult to Kryn traditions. Let them be offended," Thex said with surprising fire. "I am Emperor. My decision stands. The only question is, what do you want?" Valara thought about all the conversations with Jiwoo, the easy connection they shared, the way he saw her as a person rather than a title. She thought about his ridiculous bravery in the arena, fighting an unwinnable battle because he refused to let implications tarnish her honor. "I want to marry him," she said, "if he will have me." Across the palace, Jiwoo was having a similar conversation with Ambassador Doyeon. The ambassador explained everything with characteristic directness, watching Jiwoo's reaction carefully. "This is insane," Jiwoo said when Doyeon finished. "Marriage to an alien princess? Political alliance between species? This is far beyond anything I ever imagined." "Yes," Doyeon agreed, "it is all of those things. But the question is not whether it is sensible or expected. The question is whether you want it." Jiwoo thought about Valara, her strength, her intelligence, her frustration with being treated as a political tool. He thought about their conversations, the connection that had grown between them. He thought about the impossible complexity of loving someone from a completely different species, culture, and world. "I want to talk to her," he said finally. "Before any decisions are made, I need to speak with her directly." "Of course," Doyeon said. "That is exactly what should happen." They met that evening in the same garden where they had talked before the trial of honor. This time, both knew what was at stake. "They want us to marry," Valara said without preamble. "A political alliance wrapped in genuine feeling. It would benefit both our peoples." "I know," Jiwoo said. Ambassador Doyeon explained everything. "And?" Valara asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "What do you think?" Jiwoo moved closer, taking her hands in his. "I think this is complicated and difficult and will create enormous challenges. I think we come from completely different worlds and there will be cultural misunderstandings and political pressure." "That is not encouraging," Valara said with a slight smile. "But," Jiwoo continued, "I also think that I care about you more than I have ever cared about anyone. I think you are brilliant and strong and deserve someone who sees you for who you truly are. And I think that despite all the complications, I want to try, if you do." "I have spent years rejecting suitors," Valara said. "Perfect matches according to tradition and politics. I rejected them all because none of them saw me as a person. But you do. You see me, Jiwoo, and I see you. Is that a yes?" he asked. She smiled, truly smiled. "That is a yes. If you will have me. Not as a princess or a political symbol, just as Valara." "Then yes," Jiwoo said. "Absolutely yes." They kissed under alien stars, two people from different worlds choosing connection over convenience, love over logic, possibility over probability. It was the beginning of something unprecedented, something that would change both their lives and the relationship between their peoples. The announcement was made 3 days after Jiwoo and Valara agreed to marry. Emperor Thex declared it before the full Kryn court, with Ambassador Doyen standing beside him. Princess Valara would marry Lieutenant Han Jiwoo of Earth, creating the first official bond between the Kryn Empire and humanity. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Half the court erupted in shock and protest. Noble families who had hoped to marry into the royal line were outraged. Conservative factions claimed it violated tradition. Some questioned whether the marriage would even be legally recognized, but the other half of the court reacted differently. They saw the symbolic power of such a union, the message it sent about the Kryn Empire's willingness to embrace new alliances. They remembered Jiwoo's victory over Vorath, his quiet competence and the way he had proven himself worthy through action rather than bloodline. On Earth, the news created equal chaos. Human governments scrambled to understand the implications. Social media exploded with opinions ranging from celebration to confusion to concern. Park Mina and Lee Sodom worked around the clock, coordinating with Earth's diplomatic corps and helping manage the overwhelming response. Ambassador Doyen found himself in endless communications with Earth's leadership. "This is unprecedented," the Secretary of Global Affairs told him over secure channels. "We have no protocols for interspecies marriage at this diplomatic level." "Then we create new protocols," Doyen replied calmly. "Humanity's entire existence in space is unprecedented. We adapt. It is what we do best." Jiwoo's friend and fellow officer, Commander Cho Hana, arrived on the Kryn homeworld as part of an expanded Earth delegation. She found Jiwoo in his quarters looking overwhelmed by the situation he found himself in. "So you are marrying an alien princess," Hana said, sitting down across from him. "I leave you alone for a few months, and this is what happens." "I did not plan this," Jiwoo said defensively. "I know," Hana said with a smile. "That is what makes it perfect. You just did what you always do, the right thing without overthinking it. And somehow that led to the most important diplomatic marriage in human history." "No pressure, then," Jiwoo said dryly. "Actually, I'm here to help with planning," Hana said. "Someone needs to represent Earth's interests in the ceremony. Someone who knows you well enough to make sure this does not become just a political spectacle." "Thank you," Jiwoo said, genuinely relieved. "I am completely lost in all the ceremonial requirements and cultural protocols." Meanwhile, Valara dealt with her own challenges. Her younger brother, Prince Kaivan, supported her decision enthusiastically. Commander Rin helped her navigate the complex negotiations about ceremony details, but other family members were less accepting. "You shame the royal line," one of her aunts declared during a private family meeting. "Marrying an alien? What will future generations say?" "They will say that I chose my own path," Valara replied firmly. "That I refused to be a political tool, and that I found someone worthy of respect and love, regardless of what species he belongs to." "The Kryn have traditions," yet her aunt began. "The Kryn have traditions because our ancestors created them," Valara interrupted. "And we have the same power. Traditions change. They must, or they become chains that prevent growth." Emperor Thex supported his daughter through every challenge. He made it clear that anyone who opposed the marriage too vocally would face consequences. Gradually, the opposition quieted, though it did not disappear entirely. The wedding planning became a massive undertaking. It needed to honor both Kryn and human traditions, while creating something new that represented their union. Park Mina worked with Kryn cultural advisors to design a ceremony that would satisfy both peoples. "We incorporate Kryn warrior bonding rituals," Mina explained during one planning session, "and we add elements from traditional Earth marriages. The result will be unique, something that belongs to neither culture alone but to both." The ceremony would be broadcast across multiple star systems. Billions would watch. The symbolic weight was enormous. But Jiwoo and Valara tried to focus on what mattered. They were committing to each other, to building a life together despite enormous complications. 1 week before the ceremony, Jiwoo and Valara stole some private time together. They walked through the palace gardens, guards following at a respectful distance but giving them space. "Are you nervous?" Valara asked. "Terrified," Jiwoo admitted. "I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong. The political implications, the cultural differences, the opposition from people who think this is a mistake." "We could still back out," Valara said, though her tone made clear she did not want that. "If the pressure is too much—" "No," Jiwoo said firmly. "I am terrified, but I am also certain. This is right." We are right. Everything else we will figure out as we go. Valara smiled, relief evident. That is very human. No detailed plan, just determination to make it work. And very Kryn, Jiwoo replied, facing challenges head-on without fear. Perhaps we are not so different after all, Valara said. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, as if the universe itself approved. The ceremony took place in the grand arena where Jiwoo had fought Vorath, but transformed completely. The space was filled with flowers from both Earth and the Kryn homeworld, creating a garden that represented both their origins. Thousands attended in person. Billions watched across countless worlds. The human delegation sat alongside Kryn nobility, a visible symbol of the alliance being formalized. Jiwoo wore formal attire that blended Earth military dress uniform with Kryn ceremonial elements. Valara wore armor that was both traditional and beautiful, decorated with symbols of her accomplishments and her house. They met at the center of the arena, surrounded by representatives from both their peoples. Commander Cho Hana stood as Jiwoo's representative. Prince Kevin stood for Valara. They witnessed the blending of two traditions into something new. The ceremony included Kryn warrior oaths, where both Jiwoo and Valara vowed to defend and support each other as battle companions. It included human marriage vows, where they promised to love and cherish each other through all challenges. And it included new elements created specifically for this union, acknowledging the unprecedented nature of their bond. When it came time for the final vows, Valara spoke first. Her voice carried across the arena and through broadcast systems to watching billions. I, Valara, Princess of the Kryn Empire and Commander of the Third Fleet, take you, Jiwoo of Earth, as my partner and husband. I choose you not because of duty or politics, but because you see me as I am. Because you stood against impossible odds to defend my honor. Because you showed me that worth is measured not in bloodlines or power, but in character and courage. I vow to stand beside you, to build a future together, and to prove that love transcends the boundaries we place between species and worlds. Jiwoo's voice was steady as he spoke his own vows. I, Jiwoo, Lieutenant of Earth's Diplomatic Corps, take you, Valara, as my partner and wife. I choose you because you refused to accept what others decided you should be. Because you demanded to be seen as a person, rather than a symbol. Because you taught me that strength comes in many forms and that the bravest choice is to follow your heart despite consequences. I vow to honor you, to learn with you, and to face whatever challenges come as partners in every sense. The ceremony concluded with the joining of hands, a tradition found in both cultures. Emperor Thex declared them bound, and the arena erupted in celebration. It was not universal approval. There were still those who opposed this union. But it was acceptance, recognition that something significant had changed. The celebration that followed was spectacular. Music from both worlds played. Food from Earth and the Kryn homeworld was shared. Delegates from dozens of species attended, witnessing this unprecedented alliance. During a quiet moment, Ambassador Doyen found Jiwoo and Valara standing together, watching the celebration. You two have created something remarkable, Doyen said. This changes everything. Not just for the Kryn and humanity, but for how the galaxy thinks about alliances and relationships. We just wanted to be together, Jiwoo said. Yes, Doyen agreed. And sometimes the most personal choices have the most profound impacts. As the celebration continued into the night, Valara and Jiwoo made an announcement. They would not simply retire to ceremonial duties. Instead, they proposed forming a joint human-Kryn task force to patrol troubled regions of space. Valara would retain her fleet command, and Jiwoo would serve as strategic liaison, bringing human tactical perspectives to complement Kryn military traditions. It was practical and symbolic, showing that their partnership extended beyond personal commitment to professional collaboration, and it gave them purpose beyond being symbols of political alliance. Several weeks later, they stood together on the observation deck of their shared flagship. The crew was mixed, humans and Kryn working side by side, learning from each other. It was not always smooth. There were misunderstandings and cultural clashes, but they adapted just as Jiwoo and Valara adapted to their own relationship. Do you ever regret it? Valara asked, looking out at the stars. Everything you gave up for this? I gave up nothing that mattered, Jiwoo replied. And I gained everything important. Very smooth, Valara said with amusement.